There's a popular economic theory, or at least a idea out there, that mega tall building projects foretell economic downturns. And I wonder what your thoughts are on that.
That is a popular theory. I would argue it's a bit in error. Often what happens, a mega tall building, there's a differentiation between that and tall, is launched in an era of economic confidence,
right,
in a boom. And as we all know, things go up and things have to reset. And so what often happens is a large building may be completed and then you experience a recession. And people will often blame, well, is that tower an indicator of doom? And usually it's not the case. And you can go back and look at it, and if you look at the long run history of tall buildings, they do very well. Within the talk today, I graphed Malaysian economic growth, and I collaborated with Mr. Pelly in the design of the Petronas Towers. Before Petronas Towers, and you would say Malaysia, people would look at you with this dumbfounded expression. Where's Malaysia? Nothing would pop into your mind. Dr. Mahathir, who has been visionary prime minister, no longer unfortunately, understood that Malaysia needed an identity. And so we designed the Petronas Towers. And if you look at gross domestic product in Malaysia, it goes like that. The Petronas Towers completed, goes like that. Now, is that a conclusion of the Petronas Towers? Probably not. But nevertheless, it played a key role. Tourism has exploded. People now have a visual symbol to connect with that building. And I use Petronas simply because it's an example that I lived. There are countless examples. Adrian Smith's beautiful Burj Khalifa, and now it will soon be the Jeddah Tower. Burj Khalifa has had that impact on Dubai, and I'm confident the Jeddah Tower will have the same impact in Saudi Arabia.
I wonder if that impact gets diluted, though, when now you have so many super tall projects.
I think people are often getting confused about quality. I would argue that what architects like Adrian Smith have designed are exceptional buildings. There are lots of tall buildings. Tall doesn't necessarily translate to beauty or efficiency or quality. They're just tall. And I think you have to draw a distinction. The buildings that are built with care, Renzo Piano's Shard in London, those are the buildings that will stand the test of time. And there'll be many buildings, many we saw in this conference today, which will decidedly not stand the test of time, and their economic futures we can debate.
You're describing buildings that are usually called the pretty, in my opinion, overused term, iconic.
Right. Yeah, and it's an overused term because many of them are just dumb. They just are dumb, and they're poorly conceived, and the ownership structure doesn't necessarily have all of the appropriate values and goals that drive the creation of meaningful architecture.
And what should those values and goals be?
Well, it depends on the project. I'll go back to the project that I know, which is Petronas, and I think what Dr. Mahathir was looking for is he was looking for buildings that symbolized Malaysia as a technologically sophisticated nation ready to step out in the first world. He also wanted architecture that in some way captured the culture and heritage of Malaysia. And there was an international competition which resulted in that. Most of the submissions from all the architects that you know very well were, I'm going to call it, conventional, classic, contemporary architecture. What we endeavored to do in the design of Petronas was to somehow capture that spirit. And so I would argue his vision was a national vision, and the architecture supported that. And there is one reason I think it's resonated with people, is people recognize that there is some sort of a validity behind it. And I think that has to be present. Projects that are just motivated by pure short-term economic gain don't necessarily cut the mustard.
But turning to economic gain, from the developer's perspective or the investor's perspective, because increasingly it's part of a large team of investors that are building these huge projects, do these tall buildings and mega tall buildings provide a return on investment typically, or is it through sort of increasing the land value of the area?
Yeah, you hit it. You know very well, as you build tall buildings, the incremental costs go up and up and up, and it's difficult to get returns that are commensurate with that. If you have the correct perspective, or if you control the right sphere of influence, land, then these projects can make significant monies. And I could tell you stories about some of our clients who their only regret was that they didn't control more of the land or hold that land longer to maximize higher returns on the investment on the initial tower.
More of the surrounding land.
More of the surrounding land, because for instance, Burj Khalifa, beautiful tower. Emaar makes money selling residential properties surrounding it. If you can deliver a view of the Burj Khalifa, well, that apartment house has more value. It's like seeing the Eiffel Tower in Paris. And so, one can only speculate about the returns on Burj Khalifa, but you can be assured that they did very well selling the residential that surrounded it, because they're able to sell that for a premium that you can't get somewhere else in Dubai. And so that's the economic model that's being applied to the Jeddah Tower, and it's being frankly applied across Asia.
So how should other tower projects capture that same value? Is there a height limit to return on investment in that sense, or does it not
You
correlate
can appreciate,
like that?
as the height goes up, the cost goes up.
Sure.
And if you don't control the land, then you're a bit, or if you're not, if you don't have a kind of a national interest, if you're not trying to grow your domestic product, then it's harder to make those returns on the mega tall projects. But if you can put all the other factors in play, it can make sense. It has to be specific, though, to the place and to the time.
Tell us about the Devon Energy Center project in Oklahoma.
Well, that's a great example of, by the comparison or by the conference standards, the Devon Energy Center is nothing. It's a 50-story tower in Oklahoma City. However, in the context of Oklahoma City, 50 stories, and technically if you'd measure it by other standards, it's in height 60 stories. It towers literally twice the height of the next tallest building in Oklahoma City. It has transformed Oklahoma City. It's transformed the state. It's created a sense of pride in who they are. The mayor and the economic fathers will say it has literally spurred over $1.5 billion in additional development in downtown Oklahoma City. In addition, its purpose was to serve as a headquarters for Devon Energy. It's been phenomenally successful. Recruiting is up. Employee productivity is up. So it, by any measure, has been a smash success. And although the returns, the economic development, don't go into the pockets of Devon Energy because they don't own the land, nevertheless, it's been a boon for the city, and it's been a boon for the state. So the governor loves it, the mayor loves it, and the chairman of Devon Energy loves it.
All projects, I guess, but especially the world's tallest buildings are really these days relying on the free flow of capital across borders, international teams of investors.
Yep.
How do you think the global downturn in oil or in the economy that we could see at any given point influences the development of tall buildings? How much now are tall buildings tied to global economic cycles, and what impact does that have on you as an architect?
Well, it's a very good question. It's beyond my pay grade to answer it with the accuracy you deserve. But I'll tell you some of the challenges I've observed as an architect.
Please.
When you take on projects of this magnitude, you're not talking about pocket change. You're talking about vast sums of money. And the challenge with a super tall building is it takes years to design, although that can be accelerated, and it takes years to build. So you have to have the funds in place to carry it for 8 years.
Before you ever start seeing any return.
Right. And so you have to have that stability. And with all due respect, the economic cycles are faster typically than 8 or 9 years, and you have to be prepared to weather the storm. And so, not surprisingly, of the projects I'm very familiar with, I can think of the pauses that occurred in the process because the financial stability was not fully in place. It's a bit easier when you're doing what would be described as a project of national significance. And that can usually smooth out some of the fluctuations. So it's a slightly more unusual circumstance to see a megatall, the next world's tallest building, built by truly, fully private means. That's an feat. Even for Prince Al Walid, who is behind the Burj Khalifa and the Jeddah Tower, has extremely deep pockets. And I can't tell you where he is now. He used to be 5th wealthiest man on the planet. He has plenty of resources. Even the prince has to be very mindful of these forces, and he has to manage them carefully.
I wonder if it affects the design because, during a downturn, a client or a patron or an investor might be less likely to shell out for that extra feature.
Oh, sure. Oh, yeah. And of course, the engineering professions or design are always at the end of that, and they're just, you'll do a lot of work, and the money won't be there. You won't be paid. I mean, and that happens. It happens all the time. And so you have to play in this game, you have to understand what you're doing. You have to recognize the risk that you're playing, because as an architect, you carry a lot of risk, and we don't get the return that our clients get.
Right.
Our return is a fraction. So they carry the reward, and they should carry the risk, and ideally they will pay their design consultants. But that doesn't always happen.
Sounds like, should more architects take economics classes, or what's
No, it's just the imbalance in the power structure. And if we were providing 20% of the financing, that would be a slightly different story. But then again, we're not prepared to do that.
It's the nature of the beast, I guess.
It's the nature of the beast.